Good tidings and welcome back to Creation ModCon. Inconceivably, I'm still Captain Stoo, and if you're just joining us, where in Oblivion have you been? But fear not, you can always go back and check it out, and let's face it, you probably should. You can check out the spectacular Skywind showcase and delve into the mysteries of implementation in our Clockwork City panel. All that, plus still to come, our writing contest results. Will your tome make it into our Visage of Tamriel? And we conclude day 2 and indeed Creation ModCon with the highly anticipated Beyond Skyrim walkabout. Now, we delve into our halls of countenance as we begin unraveling the scroll with our awfully nice writing panel. But before we start, I just want to say, you guys in the chat have been incredibly positive today, and we've noticed, and it's been inspiring. So thank you very much, guys. Keep the questions coming for the Q&A at the end. And let's get to it. So let's meet the panel for our writers. Kind of, I guess, sorry. Let's start with Arcane. Tell us about yourself.
Hello, everybody. I am Arcane Impact. I'm a writer on Beyond Skyrim, Iliac Bay, Elsewhere, and Roskria. And I also edited a couple of the videos that you're seeing in the background here. If you're interested in seeing more of my work, you can find me at arcaneimpact.com.
Nice show. And Arger, how about yourself?
Hi. Many of you may have seen me before. I am the 3D, 2D, and a writing director for Beyond Skyrim Cyrodiil. I am a writer for BS Argonia, and I also do some modeling for Beyond Skyrim Roskria.
And Harry.
Hey everyone, my name is Harry DeLuca. You can find me on LinkedIn at Harry DeLuca. I am a game writing teacher in the Arcane University, but I'm also a writer and editor for Beyond Skyrim Cyrodiil. Thanks for coming.
Hendris.
Yo, I'm Hendris. I'm a concept artist and a writer for Beyond Skyrim Admora and for Roskria. And I'm also acting as the leading writer for Admora, the favorite big icicle up in the north.
Awesome. And Rhea?
Hiya, I'm Maria Newton. I'm one of the narrative directors on Beyond Skyrim Cyrodiil. My primary focus there is on quality control and editing. I have basically the final oversight of everything that goes into the game or into the mod in terms of quality. I'm also an amateur novelist and short story writer. You can find my work on Amazon under my name. And for my day job, I'm also a full-time narrative designer at Tributary Games, which is a London-based indie game studio focused on multiplayer social narrative games. And you can find me on Twitter as well at @RheaNewton_. That's my shill.
Good stuff. And Viz.
Hi, I'm Viz Sarden. I am a writer for Beyond Skyrim Roskria, as well as the narrative director and narrative lead for that particular Beyond Skyrim project. My focus is on directing claims for the other writers in that area, as well as maintaining the overall lore of that specific region.
Perfect. So let's just get cracking. We'll start with you today, Harry. What exactly does a writer on Beyond Skyrim do, and what is your perspective on it?
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, I personally write for County Anvil, mainly. Typically, writers are given a county to write for, but we kind of hop between counties and cities a lot of the time to help keep things feeling interconnected and all that good stuff. But I guess the general workflow is more you find a claim that you want to write for, which can be something like a quest, an NPC, or a location, basically anything that needs writing. Could be a dungeon. But when you're done, it basically gets marked for review, so editors know to look at it, and everyone can kind of see how each claim is progressing. And aside from that, every month, the writing leads, like Arger, will basically check in with us. Do you want to talk about that a bit, Arger?
Yeah, so as Harry said, I'm the claim director for Beyond Skyrim Cyrodiil for writing, which means I handle each individual writer's current task and kind of keep people working on the highest priority claims and in the same kind of general area. As you might have heard before, I think in the lead chat, Bellatrix mentioned our workflow and that we generally kind of move through with writing in some of the other departments. all in kind of like a stream together. And so that's one thing I handle. As a writer, personally, you'll notice that some of the each of the different projects have slight differences between their specific workflows. But we all generally do the same thing for writing. You got draft dialogue, describe the characters you make very in detail, from appearances to schedules. And from quest point of view, I write the Sun College Whispers quest line, so you make a flowchart for that, and then you get to the hard writing. And in the implementation panel earlier, they've mentioned the kind of handling mechanic scope. That's something we have to work heavily with them on.
Great. Hendris, throw this to you. What's unique about writing for a mod compared to other media?
Ooh, yeah. That's a so the thing with Beyond Skyrim is that, or with new media, is that we start where others have left off, which means that we have already established lore, we have established storylines and characters that we can work with, and we have all this content that we can just work with, and that we can elaborate on. So one of the cool things about working with Beyond Skyrim is that Skyrim has, or just Elder Scrolls in general, has so much lore, and we can just take take a few things that we're getting interested in, and then just try to elaborate on those, and just see what we can do to either improve on them, or to just make them that much more special.
Not only that, but writing for a mod, we're writing for such an open platform. Like, I'm coming from a background of writing for theater and for tabletop RPGs, and in both of those instances, I like to think of them as you're kind of writing for the interpretation. You know, you have to write with the knowledge that someone's going to take what you've written and kind of twist it a little bit. Either a director is going to put their own interpretation of the staging and presentation over it, or a DM is going to, weave it into their own campaign. And similarly with Beyond Skyrim, and really all the Skyrim mods, we have to be sort of cognizant of the vast amount of ways that people can play Skyrim and experience the stories that we're trying to tell, whether they are doing a vanilla run, heavily modded, or even in VR.
Yeah. One thing I would add as well is that coming at it from a lot of writers get their start in writing novels or stories, which is where I started. There's something that Argyle mentioned in the last question, which was scope, which is incredibly important when you're writing for a mod or for any game project, to be fair. It's not like a book or a story where you have pretty much unlimited creativity and you're the master of your own story. In a project like this, you work on a team. You have responsibilities and you have a scope to work to. And a lot of new writers, definitely, that's something that they forget or that they don't think about the first time they write. It's a very important skill to learn if you're looking to become a writer. And also, it's different from normal game dev because I also work in an actual game dev studio. And in a game dev studio, you have a team, just like on a Beyond Skyrim project, but you have a set scope. The scope is a lot more defined early on. You have a budget, you have a deadline, you have a list of assets and features, and it's very, you have to work to those because it's very clear cut from the beginning. You have a deadline that you have to work to. We don't really have that in Beyond Skyrim, so we kind of have theoretically we have unlimited scope. We could keep making it forever if we wanted to because we don't have to pay anyone. But that means we have to be a lot more responsible for ourselves. We have to be a lot more self-limiting. We have to decide what are the most important things we want to do with the mod, because otherwise it's a massive problem with a lot of mod projects is scope creep, where they never ever release because they spend years making things and then remaking things because they want it to be perfect. But there has to be a cutoff point, especially as a lead. That's a really important thing to have, but also like on a personal level, you need to learn to be able to do that. And writing is so integral to the game, to the mod. a lot of our ideas set the scope for the rest of the mod. What 3D assets need to be made, what locations need to be made by the landscaping department. So yeah, it's a very important part of the process.
Totally. And if we focus more on the storytelling element, Arger, how do you write for a pre-existing IP, especially one with unreliable narrators?
Well, I think the unreliable narrator aspect of the Elder Scrolls IP makes it very fun to write with because their style of world building is so open. It gives us so much creative freedom. At the same time, writing for an IP, kind of in general, is kind of like writing for a sequel in that you kind of have all the hard work out of the way, getting the actual, like, what is the entire theme of the world, what colors you're going to use for the setting, what's the story you're trying to get across. All those things, and the mechanics especially, are laid out for you and already done. So it kind of allows us to focus our view on the actual writing and the stories we want to tell within that world. It can be a little bit of a double-edged sword in that, yes, you have all that work to go off of, but it's also someone else's love child, brainchild. So you have to make it work with the original point of the medium and the work you're working with.
Yeah, I feel like unreliable narrators in general, they facilitate mystery, right? And that's kind of like a huge reason why a lot of people play games. Even games that aren't strictly like in the mystery genre use mystery as like the main allure of their story. So it's like the not knowing that, like, I think personally, like, keeps people coming back. Um, and if you just like give an uncontradictable answer, like uh you establish like what actually happened and there's no mystery anymore, it kind of kills it, right? And maybe some people's motivation to play the game in the process. So I think we try to be kind of like tactful in that regard with uh unreliable narrators and the mystery, I guess, that comes
I
with it.
I think I have
Oh.
like my take might be a little bit different from others here, but I think that um the one thing I would say is that limitations often breed creativity, and I think you guys would agree with that. I think that is very much like it's actually a really good environment for creating new stories, pre-existing IP. It's one of the reasons why fandoms are really popular and fan fiction is really popular. But I would honestly say that there are two mistakes that I see when people do that sort of work, and the first one is being too ambitious and changing too much, just like you said, Harry, and being too authoritative. But then I think the other mistake that you can sometimes make is not being ambitious enough, because I think when people read these things like these fan fictions, or when people, which is basically what our mod is a glorified fan fiction, um, or when people look at a new author or a new writer coming onto a TV show, they're looking for you to most of the time they're looking for you to have a new take on a familiar thing. They don't want you to recreate the story that already happened. It's kind of one of the reasons I never liked the new Star Wars movies, because it felt like the first one was just a rehash of A New Hope. Um, it just you wanna find what you love about the project and take it in a direction that's unique to you. What bring your unique experience to the table and tell your story in a world that people are already familiar with, where you don't have to explain the background. Um, I had this. I used to work on a game based on the Love Island reality TV show, which is a bit of a funny experience that I have. For like a fantasy nerd like me, like writing on Love Island was a bit bizarre. For anyone who doesn't know, it's a reality TV show where a bunch of like 20-year-olds are on an island and they have to like couple up and make relationships, and they have a lot of a lot of sex and stuff. It's kind of bizarre. It's very different from what I usually write. But if you're looking to be like a professional writer, then your livelihood depends on making a good product. And if you're not enjoying writing, then nobody else is going to enjoy what you produce. So you need to find the thing that you really love about the IP, even if it's not one that you're very familiar with, and then run with that and push it as hard as you can and bring your unique take to it. That's my
I ab-
that's my
I
advice.
absolutely
I think it's actually really, really good thing.
Oh, I was just going to say that I absolutely agree with that. And I think that one of the interesting things about writing for a pre-existing IP, especially for a mod, is that we have to keep the underlying structure and stakes of the IP, in this case, the Elder Scrolls, in mind. And remember that everything that we're doing should come across as a celebration, not like a revision of the original work. And that can create limitations, but it can also create a lot of interesting ways to interpret the work itself. Like you guys said, there's a lot of like characters or concepts, like for example the Daedric Princes, where they've been explored a lot in the main IP, but there's always ways to find little aspects of things that you like and find those aspects and either explore them further in a way that the games haven't done yet, or just bring your own twist to them. And that's part of the most enjoyable part of this kind of writing, is that it gives you that ability to explore those niches where otherwise you feel as though they maybe haven't been explored enough, and also add your own flavor to them overall, while keeping the individual, like smaller scale aspects of the world in mind.
Cool. So the next question I've got for you guys, we'll go to Ria for this. How do you collaborate with different departments for a better story?
Communicate. No, in all seriousness, communicate. So again, I think I mentioned this, but being a writer for a lot of people is a solitary job at first. But when you work on a project, whether it's a game, a real game, or a mod, or anything like that, you're working on a team, and that's just really important to have at the front of your mind at all times. Ask questions, try to understand other people's jobs as much as possible, be humble. You might be the writer, you might have a lot of power, but you need to respect other people's work and respect the amount of effort that they put in to bring your crazy dreams to life. Just learn to be a better communicator in general. If you want to be able to communicate to people in a pleasant manner, work on your team building skills. It sounds very corporate when I say all this, but it's very true, especially over the internet when you don't really see people in person. Text can always be misconstrued. Take time. You're a writer. You can write well, hopefully. Take time to write your messages the right way. You're working in a creative team. Don't be a hermit. Just always be putting questions out, communicating. It's tempting for a writer to just go into their shed and then return 3 months later with a quest and be like, I did it. You don't really want to do that. Get ideas from other people who know what they're doing. Implementers, landscapers say, hey, I've got an idea for a quest, but I'm not sure how it's going to work. Ask other writers their perspective. Say, I don't know how to implement this part of the quest, but this is the vibe I want to go for. And then guaranteed, if you're pleasant about it, someone will help you. One of the other departments will come in and say, oh, there's a location here that I could make, or we could implement it in this way with these mechanics. Just be humble and always be asking questions. That's my advice.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important to communicate amongst team members. I agree. And it's funny because as writers, including other departments, is kind of a foundational skill. In that we're writing not just the dialogue for characters, but we're building the world. So you need to include all that sensory information. And in a medium like a video game, it's not just saying what's going on. You have to make sure you can present it to the player, to make sure they feel what you want them to feel. And the way to do that is through the departments of implementation, art, interiors, the world around you. And it's funny because of that very nature of writing, even the people on this panel there are multiple departments, is what I'm saying. Like I myself am an art director. Rhea does implementation so much, et cetera, et cetera. And it's kind of the fun part about video games, in my opinion, is that you get to really bring this world to life. Absolutely.
And even more specifically, like not just with being in a video game project, but with being in a mod project, I think we have a unique opportunity to kind of get our hands dirty with that sort of implementation, getting into the systems a little bit more, because our teams are a little bit more free-form. If you have the skills, you can kind of contribute in other ways. For instance, I mentioned I did some video editing. I've also done some of the map markers for various projects, and that's just kind of getting involved with that stuff can help you become more familiar with, the system that the box, essentially, the creation kit, which is the box that we are all working within. And it really does change your writing to have to work within the limitations that the creation kit kind of places on us, whether it's gameplay or even just the ever-present character limit.
Awesome. So I think we're going to throw you over to the general masses now for the Q&A. So we've got some absolutely brilliant questions already. So I'm going to start with a two-part question. This is from Reed Still. So the first part is, what quest lines from the existing Elder Scrolls games are your favorites and or particularly influenced your writing for the mods? And the second part is, and the inverse, which existing quests have flaws that taught you to improve on those issues in your own quests? Who wants to take that first?
I will jump in and say that in a weird kind of way, both of those questions for me can be answered through the College of Winterhold questline in Skyrim, because from a concept level, I went into it when I first played Skyrim thinking, oh my god, this is such a interesting idea on a new way that like a mage questline can be done in an Elder Scrolls game. Then in the end, it ended up being a little bit lackluster for my liking, but it ended up kind of teaching me a good amount of like ideas and concepts about the flaws inherent with certain type of like quest structures, and some of its failings and lackluster aspects, it definitely taught me how to write and consider what the overall feel of a quest line should be, because a quest line isn't just a single story. Particularly a faction quest line in an Elder Scrolls game, taking the IP in mind, should have the player be more or less wrapped up in the particular faction. You should understand what they are about, what they do by the time that you're done. And I never really got that with the College of Winterhold. That was one of my biggest disappointments. But I feel as though there was a lot of potential there. And so it kind of taught me that when you do a quest line like that and you write a quest line that has you involved with a particular faction, you need to make sure that the player by the end kind of understands what that faction is about. That's one of the reasons why, on the other side of things, I enjoyed the Dawnguard quest line in the DLC, because it gave you that idea of like whether or not you join the vampires or the Dawnguard, you joined one of the factions and you really felt like you understood what those factions stood for and like who every member of those factions were, and that was enjoyable.
It's funny that if I can jump in on that one, it's funny because that you say Dawnguard and the Winterhold questline are yours, because they're very much mine as well. I think that it's funny. Bethesda has great foundations for their quest line. It's like I mentioned earlier in the world building. They set things up very well. And I think a lot of the quests don't actually turn out the way the original designers wanted them to, mainly, I imagine, due to cuts. Because if you like look into the backstory of the College Winterhold questline specifically, I think you can find like what they wanted it to be, and it was really epic from what I could tell. And it's also from Oblivion, because I'm one of the people who started playing Bethesda games on Oblivion. And so their mage's questline is kind of similar. They have like this great idea of magic, how it goes from this thing that's literally infinite, you can pretty much do whatever you want, and how they try to control that through regulation, and how that causes social like conflict amongst its members. It's one of those things that it didn't really implement as well, though, based on that design. You mostly went around fighting enemies you don't even really need to use magic in many senses. It's the same way in the College of Winterhold. Things like the Thieves Guild and Dawn Guard, I think, did better in the mechanic side of things. Like you mentioned, Visadin, you had more choice, more personal choice, and things of that nature. So I kind of take a mashup myself, writing like the Sinan College of Whispers quest lines. I try to take the advanced mechanics ideas from those types of things and even improve on them where possible, and just base the actual content off the awesome lore and world building that Bethesda set up.
Oh yeah, and to a certain extent, it's really tragic about the College of Winterhold because I am one of those people that love it as a concept, but every time I play through it, I always am like, God, I wish that the Sarthal portion and the portion where you're just exploring this ruin with other mages, trying to find artifacts while working together and stuff like that. I wish that had been more of it and not just what it turned into. But you have to accept it for what it is. But you can also take what you love about it and kind of try to use it to inspire your own work, and that I think is really what modding is to a large extent.
Can I jump in and offer a non-Elder Scrolls alternative to?
Please do.
I want to say quest lines that really taught me a lot of things. The main quest in The Witcher 3 and Blood and Wine, the DLC. They're a little bit higher. They're a little bit more high budget than what we normally do in Skyrim, but telling a complete story, and not too long in the case of like the DLC, with a great mystery, great characters, all of that, and a good structure all the way through with a rising tension, and then the aftermath and the great scene at the end where I don't want to say any spoilers, but the great scene at the end really ties it all together in a really neat bow. I learned a lot from those games. It's kind of a cliche to talk about CDPR games, I think. Similarly, I think I might get crucified for this, but I think Cyberpunk had some really great quest lines in it. Also had some bad writing in it, and I think that there's a really good learning experience there of what worked and didn't work. I think some of the character storylines were actually really, really, really good. Really great at like establishing interesting characters, which is not really done so much in Elder Scrolls. But if you're writing a character-focused game, Judy's questline in Cyberpunk, I think, was pretty good. Although there was a bit of stochastic drama, which was kind of a bit out of place sometimes. But I really liked it in general. Those games are big inspirations for me.
For me, I would. Oh, sorry.
I know we spent like a lot of kind of time on this question, but it's because it's really good. I think like what Ria said, I think just playing games in general, and like the more modern games, to see like what is working and what is not is super informative, and can really help you. I had to look up what quest it was specifically from Skyrim that helped me, but I basically had an idea for like an undercover quest where the player had to like stay undercover, but they also had a chance of being found out. So my mind immediately went to kill an empire, which is the one where you have to impersonate the gourmet. And in that quest, you can't be found out as the imposter like early on. It happens more so just you're funneled into that outcome rather than you being allowed to go through it completely undetected. So I basically I took that concept and I thought about it, and I thought, okay, where can I introduce a way to make it so the player can be found out and whatnot? And I think that is not necessarily an improvement, just a just a different experience for the player in general that I think will hopefully work.
That you mentioned to kill an empire. There's actually a quest in Skyrim where you can go undercover, but you're also able to be found out, and that is doing the diplomatic immunity quest.
Oh, right.
Where
Yeah.
if you're an Elder, you can slip into some nearby Thalmor ropes, and if you keep your distance with the Thalmor, they won't aggro on you. Which is a good it's a good idea, but it wasn't well executed because you did not really know about that.
Right, it wasn't the focus exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And
interesting.
you,
It's just a different way of approaching it. Yeah.
yeah, you're not really told that you can actually do this. So a lot of people found out by accident, perhaps, that oh yeah, they're playing a Dragonborn mage, and then suddenly, they don't outgrab me. What's happening now? Is this a bug? Is this a feature?
Yeah, it's very interesting because there are so many small little details like that in Bethesda games. With Skyrim, I feel like it has a lot of those where you wish that they had maybe done a little bit more with them or kind of pointed you in that direction. But they're just one-off little tidbits like that in the game that you have to take in and enjoy. But at the same time, I like to think of those as like invitations to kind of allow your creativity to think, how could this work in other stories and things like that? Because really, those kind of moments are fun when they happen, but so brief that you have to make the best of them.
Yeah, we actually got such a great amount of mileage from that question, and it's a great question. So thank you, Reed Stilt, for that. We'll fire out a question we got from Pointless Discussion. So this is for everyone, and just try and give us maybe like a concise and quick explanation of why. But the question is, which part of the Elder Scrolls lore is the most interesting to each of you? We'll start with you, Arcane.
Oh boy, if I had to say, it would probably be the Khajiit and their connection to the moons. I really have a big attraction to that kind of mystical, but not very well explained, or almost it seems kind of coincidental sort of systems, because there's a lot of mileage there for, building myth around it that might not necessarily be true, but that's kind of how you build these layered universes.
Do anyone else want to jump onto that?
Yeah, I can. What I would say is, I did bring it up in the art panel during a similar question, I think, but the Dwemer, I think, were one of my favorite cultures. And the reason for that being is that the world is designed in a way that it makes the craziest, most outlandish ideas feel grounded in many sense. Because when you're walking around the world, you're just going through the cities, you're talking to the people, and they have like everyday life problems. And it's those things I actually like more in some respect. But for those to stand out, you also need those extreme opposite the end of the pole ideas, which the Elder Scrolls is founded off of. Like you have the Dwemer race's random disappearance, the Akaviri that you know nothing about, even though they're also at the same time everywhere in the world, which is fascinating. And I think one point in an Elder Scrolls game that encapsulate that perfectly is the ending of Morrowind's main quest. If you don't know what happened, but basically you get to the end and it's like this myth that turns out to be like, is this really true or is it not? So it kind of plays on like, in our real world, what if mythology was actually true in the underlying nature of the world? It's really fascinating to me.
And to jump on to that question as well, one of the cultures that I find very fascinating, and one of the stories, therefore, that I find very interesting in the Elder Scrolls are those of the Reachmen in Skyrim, because they have a very fascinating culture in that they have a mixture of Aedra and Daedra that they worship, and their culture is so inherently linked to Hercene, but also to some of the Daedric princes, and yet we see that they are able to achieve these acts of magic, like with the Briarhearts, that shouldn't really be possible, and yet they are. And there's this sense that they have this completely different way of just viewing the world of Tamriel than what most of the other citizens that we talk to are. And we never really get a chance in Skyrim. We do a little bit in Elder Scrolls Online, but in Skyrim itself, you never really get a chance to talk with them that much. And so there's a good deal of mystery inherent in what their culture is really like outside of the Forsworn, which is just a small faction of them. And so so there are elements of that, but I think the Wheatsmen do it the best of where the Elder Scrolls gives us these cultures that have these alternate mix of deities that aren't necessarily the same definitions of good and evil that most of society has. And I find those cultures, especially the Wheatsmen, interesting in the sense that they apparently are just this fully thriving civilization that sees her scene and also Dibella as being equal, which is fascinating.
Yeah, I might have a bit of a bias because I work on Mora, but what kind of coexists with the Reachman is the Nordic pantheon and the dragon cult that was showcased in Skyrim. Prior to Skyrim, we knew nothing about the dragon cult, not even that there was even one. But now we have all this lore about this like ancient, huge political party that just ruled the land. And despite the player having to delve into like 12 of them regularly, we don't learn a thing about them. We know that there used to be dragon priests and that they somehow made the Draugr. And somehow this also connects to, let's say, the Reach folk, but also the Admorans, and just the entire backstory of the whole thing with the Nordic pantheon. The pantheon in Skyrim was pretty much imperialized. So they didn't have Shor, Kain, and Sun or Janelle, but they did have Lorcan, they did have Julianos, they did have Kinnereth, and it's just that the pantheon in Skyrim was the pantheon in the lore used to be so much more different. For example, Kain was the lead goddess of the pantheon, with Mara and Dibella. She was pretty much the main three gods that they worshipped as the health gods, and we see nothing of that in the actual writing, but it is kind of implied with Skyrim, as the only three big temples that you actually see are the Temple of Dibella in Markarth, the Temple of Kain in Right One, and the Temple of Mara in Riften. There's no other proper temples to just one of them. It's just, oh yeah, there's Temple of the Eight in Solitude, but apart from that, we have nothing on them.
It is very interesting the way that there's so much hinted at about the old Nordic pantheon in Skyrim, but you only really see the imperialized version of them. And so I feel like that's something that writers in Roscrea and more definitely want to delve into a little bit more. I know that got my creativity working when the more I researched into it, because there's so many interesting little tidbits about what they were like that whenever we're explored, and it just it gets my mind working, and I think that's an aspect of the lore that offers a lot of fun possibilities.
Absolutely.
Let's do a quick a speed run round, Stoo. You think you can speed run a few questions with us?
A few more community questions, you mean?
The community questions.
I reckon we could squeeze one more in if we're super quick.
Yeah.
Let's see. I did like the question from Caledonia because we kind of touched upon it a little bit more. It'd be good to expand on it. Do you think that interdisciplinary skills, i.e., level design or implementation, would help you for a better writer? So that's if we get some answers from a multi-disciplined artist, that would be great.
Level design. You should have at least a working knowledge of level design, because you and level designers, given just the nature of how quests work in Skyrim, you'll probably have to talk to them a lot to negotiate how quests go down.
Implementation is also a good one, just because then you know what is possible and what is not. We have a few instances where writers go a bit overboard, and then we'll have to dial it back a bit, seeing as you can't really implement that, and you need to choose a different idea.
Visual design.
I was going to say the answer to the question is yes. In case you haven't got that yet, because the question is, do you think a knowledge would help? The answer is yes.
The correct one, yeah.
I was just going to say, visual design and 2D design can also be really helpful, especially with making clear scope documents, which is an aspect that I don't think a lot of people realize that we do, is making the kind of layouts of what a town needs to be and how big it needs to be, etc.
Perfect. Well, I'll go to our last prepared question we had. Again, before we sign off the last question, just want to thank the panel who've been absolutely brilliant today. So, our closing question: if you could give one piece of advice to the prospective writers that are listening, what would it be? We'll start with you. Arcane. We'll start with you.
Sure. I would say don't be afraid to, present ideas as they come and put them on the back burner as if they're not ready yet. Because, this is a big collaborative thing, and sometimes ideas that you bring forward may not be ready for the project that you're doing at the moment, but they can always come back in different forms.
I would say take care of your health, because one of the biggest points of writing is to represent living. And so the only way you're going to really get the experience you need to get your ideas onto paper in a realistic way is by going outside and living your own life. So like Rhea pointed out before, you don't really want to be a hermit and you got to communicate. So definitely go meet the people of your community and make sure you take care of your health, exercise, things like that.
Something I think that's helped me a lot is realizing that I should have a reason why I'm writing something down, which, that's not always the way to go. But for me personally, when I know why I'm writing something, it really helps keep me motivated to keep doing it. If I'm just, word vomiting onto a page, it starts to lose meaning for me. So if you're including a line of dialogue or writing anything, have a purpose for it and always ask yourself why, that kind of a thing.
Great.
I would say have fun. Writing is a creative art, and Beyond Skyrim, or just the Beyond Skyrim, the Arcane University, Skywind, and Skyblivion, they're all volunteer projects. So just have fun. We're all just people trying to do our best here, and might as well have a good time while doing so.
This is going to sound like a cliche, but it's true. Practice, 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 practice. Write to your heart's content. Write whenever you can, whenever you have time. Find something that you love and write about it. Fandom gets a bad rap. Fan fiction, I mentioned this already, but fan fiction is great for training your skills. Find a universe that you love. Write something in it. Doesn't matter what it is. Just write things. And then when you play media or you consume media, whether that's a TV show or a game or a book, compare it to your own work. You'll start to train a writer brain after a while, is what I call it. This writer brain, which is something that after a while you just can't turn it off. You'll play a game and you'll be like, oh, that's really good writing, or oh, that's really bad writing. Train that brain, practice, and then compare with your favorite things and see what the difference is and whether you think you did better or worse than the people that you want to take after.
I would say give yourself the leniency and the ability to have an idea fall short or fail or not come together, and give yourself the leniency to accept that and come back to it after a while. Because writing is a lot of ideas that may not come together on the first draft, that may take some time to really make sense or come to their full effect. So give yourself the ability to step away for a while, think things through, and you might eventually come back to an idea that you thought, oh, that didn't really work out, and suddenly you have a way of making it even better than you thought. So give yourself that ability to be patient with your writing process and give all of your ideas the time that they take to come together, because it's different for all of them.
For sure.
Brilliant. That's a great way to end the panel today. I want to once again thank the panel. They've been absolutely brilliant today. Thank you for all the chat, for all your brilliant questions. Again, very stimulating answers from the panel. Stay tuned, because next we have the results of our writing contest. So, as I say, you're going to hear some of these lore books get read out, and it is absolutely fantastic. You're going to love every second of it. And after that, we finish off Creation ModCon with our Beyond Skyrim walkabout at 9 p.m. GMT. Thanks again, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the convention, and hopefully we'll see you again next year. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thanks.